Sweep the Sweeper by Robert P. Fitton. Mike released the bowling ball and it slid swiftly down the waxed wood alley, spinning and twisting toward the pins. The sweeper moved above the pins and stopped long enough to block the ball. Great. As if my life hasn't fallen apart enough without a dumb thing like this. That was a strike. Tough luck, Mike, said Tony from the scores table. Yeah, tough luck. Mike pushed the button next to the racked bowling balls, but the sweeper remained stuck. He started down the alley and his friends called back from the bench. Mike couldn't care less about what people said ever since Jody died. He reached the end of the alley and had one foot in the gutter as he grabbed the sweeper. Dislodging it would be easy if he just shook it. Voices echoed from behind the wall.
Sweep the sweeper. Sweep the sweeper.
Mike held the sweeper and looked upward behind the wall. Who's there? I can't loosen this stupid thing. That last one was a perfect strike.
Sweep the sweeper. Sweep the sweeper.
Wise guys, said Mike as he turned. The bowling alley people and Tony moved down the alley. This thing is stuck. Mike moved out of the path of the sweeper as it swept forward. Who are you talking to? Asked Tony, looking above the sweeper. The new set of pins was firmly set in place by the machine. Some wise guy up there. The man behind the front desk looked at the sweeper and then at Mike. It's working now. It's all automatic. Will you tell the guy up there to stop it? Up where? Up there where the sweeper comes down. The little man grinned. Right, the only thing behind there are wires and pulleys. Right, said Mike as he and Tony started back up the alley. I heard a voice up there, Tony. Hey, Mike, Fran and I have been thinking you may need to talk to somebody. I've been meaning to mention it to you ever since Jody died. Mike stopped midway in the alley. You don't believe me, do you? Tony, there was somebody behind those pins talking to me. This is crazy, for crying out loud. Mike dropped Tony at his house and drove to his old empty home. He gripped the wheel as the rain hit the windshield and the wipers slowly pushed back waves of water. The radio blasted out an away game through the car's front speakers. He thought about Jody at the ball game a year ago before she got sick. Her wide smile and bright eyes shone through, thoughts buried deep in his head. She always made him laugh.
Sweep the sweeper. Sweep the sweeper.
Mike banged the dash. Listen to me. Who are you? What do you want? Is Jody with you? The ball game announcer continued the play-by-play. Mike looked over his shoulder and pulled back on the road. As he passed under each streetlight, he now considered Tony's advice. Speaking to a professional about these odd voices now seemed the logical course. Dr. Dunn's constant smile bothered Mike. He sat in a group session listening to stories of woe, while the effervescent Dunn, perched with his clipboard and yellow pad, hurled back platitudes to the group. Let us tell each other how our group experience has gained us the peace of mind we have all sought. Mike rolled his eyes and looked out the window at the green foliage. When the cars and the people became frozen like an action photograph, he pushed his chair back and hurried across the room and leaned on the heater. Street traffic was indeed stuck, and a man with a briefcase was halted on the sidewalk. Do you have a problem, Mike? Problem? The whole world has stopped. Excuse me? I said the whole world has stopped. Dunn wrote something down on his pad. Perhaps we'll move up to you. What has the group experience brought you? Mike continued to look out the window. The green traffic light never changed. A tractor-trailer's wide wheels were turned, but it was motionless at the intersection. You're asking me about the group experience when the whole world has stopped? You miss your wife, don't you, Mike? Tell us about the psychological components of your loss. Mike spun around. Psychological components? What is this, a class in quantum mechanics? Don't you people have any feelings? He stared out the room. Giving up? I tell you, the whole world out there has stopped. Mike pushed the classroom door and ran into the corridor. Outside, a dog's solid head was tilted upward. When he reached the door, he scanned the unchanging scene. Then he moved out the larger door and stepped into a quiet world with sharp shadows. His voice echoed, "Hello! Hello!" He patted the dog's smooth black fur. The rigid dog had no warmth. "Where am I?" The dog barked, and the truck rounded the corner. Mike spun and faced the school as the dog sniffed his sneakers. "This is insane. Where are you people? Where are you?" Mike kicked the dirt. Several people joined Dunn in the classroom window. Mike waved his hand through the air and started down the street. His mind was clear about what he had seen, and he didn't dispute what he had heard at the bowling alley. Dunn and Tony were the ones who were mad. Mike entered the ballpark and held his ticket stub as he moved up the ramp into the crowd noise. The overhead light towers blazed across the green grass. He checked his row number. His grandstand seat was near the section where he and Jody used to sit. He tried reasoning out the situation from the moment he had first heard voices above the bowling alley pins. To an outside observer, he probably was crazy. He even questioned his own ability to make rational judgments, but he never stopped believing in what he had seen and heard. He watched the game, keeping score just as he had for Jody, but he was certain that that odd cessation of time and space would have a greater meaning. At the bottom of the seventh, as he jotted down a base hit, the crowd noise dissipated. Mike looked up. The pitcher had completed his windup, released the ball, and had hung in midair halfway to the plate. He stood and studied the man smoking the cigar next to him. Another guy in a red baseball cap lifted a plastic cup to his mouth. Dropping his scorecard, he shuffled back to the grandstand aisle and cupped his hands skyward into the frozen cigarette smoke in the night air. "Help me! Help me! Mike! Mike!" The distant voice may have come from the playing field. He ran down the stairs toward the first base dugout. Players were caught in action. The next batter had almost completed a practice swing in the on-deck circle. Mike leaped the fence and landed in the dirt. "Who's calling me?" "Mike, it's Jody." Mike walked across the first baseline and onto the infield. He raised his hand over his eyes to block the tower lights, and he scanned the third base stands. He saw her long blonde hair as she waved from the stairs, descending onto the playing field. "Jody!" Mike sprinted diagonally across the infield grass. He raced past the rigid shortstop and across the dirt. Jody neared the bottom of the long cement stairway. She crawled over the green wall and stepped onto the dirt rim. But as she hit the outfield grass, things blurred. Images crossed over like a pair of broken binocular lenses. His balance lost, Mike slowed and staggered onto the grass. Jody was only 20 feet away. "Jody, where are we?" "I thought you were dead, Mike." "Me?" Mike was immobilized on his stomach and attempted to keep his head up. Her outstretched arms were almost as solid as the crowd around the ballpark. With considerable effort, he crawled toward her fractured, overlapped image. "I'm not dead." Sweating and severely hampered, Mike held out his hand. Jody's fingertips were only inches away now. With one last thrust, he grabbed her hand. He felt her warm flesh, but in an instant, she was gone. With the crack of the ball, the umpire yelled out and the cops poured out of the dugout. They lifted him under the arms as the crowd booed. He kept calling her name as he was dragged into the dugout. Why had she thought he was dead? "You were not supposed to be on the field," said Dr. Dunn. Mike fought to keep his eyes open. He stared at the traffic flowing by the outside intersection and realized the only reason he was not locked up because he told Tony he'd be willing to undergo therapy with Dunn. Jody's touch was so vivid. Somehow she was alive within the frozen morass at the ballpark. "I understand." "You loved your wife, didn't you, Mike?" What kind of an inane question is that? Dunn removed his glasses and squinted. "You may have hated your wife for all I know." "No." Mike wished he didn't have to listen to this lecture. "What do you want to accomplish with all this?" "Very good. Right to the point." "And why were you out on that field?" Mike turned from the window. "Doesn't matter." "No, I think it does." "Listen, this session is almost over. Have I gotten my hour's worth?" Dunn lifted his glasses back in place. He pursed his lips and stood. At the desk, he wrote out the date and time on a small business card. I saw my wife and I tried to reach for her, but I couldn't. Dunn looked up. I was stopped. I had her hand in mine when it all slipped away. Dunn handed him the card. Next week's appointment was scrawled in red ink. Jody is dead, Mike. No. She thought I was dead. Then what stopped you? I froze up, and then I was back, lying like an idiot on the field. That's good. At least you're embarrassed about it. Who wouldn't be? I know she's alive now. She's out there, somewhere. I know she'll be back. I just know it. Tony and the rest of the team were suspicious about Mike bowling so well. The smile on his face seemed to reflect more than the last successive strike. Something lifted him from within. Tony watched him hold the ball in his hands and move the smooth surface over his palms. The sweeper pulled the pins behind the black curtain and then retracted as the pin setter lowered a new set of candle pins into place. Tony leaned to his friends. Think Mike is finally getting it together. Well, it must be that shrink, said Danny. Tony nodded as Mike moved his arm back, but as he swung the ball forward, the sweeper descended upon the pins and the ball cracked against the wood. Mike gazed back at Tony and then started down the waxed wood. Here we go again. Mike, let the people in the alley take care of it. He should just stay put. Mike reached the end of the alley, squatted down and grabbed both sides of the blue sweeper. He looked upward and shook it. Tony moved his pencil over the score sheet and noted the problem with the sweeper, but Mike was climbing behind the pins. Soon his legs and feet disappeared behind the wall of alley 17. What the hell is he doing? I don't know. Tony set down the pencil and approached the alley. Across the long bowling alley expanse, the ball shot down the wood, colliding into the pins. Through the persistent buzz, Tony balanced himself along the gutters. Mike, get the hell out of there! The sweeper remained stuck in front of the set pins. Tony bent over and looked upward. The wooden connecting sweeper arms were attached to the machine cams. Mike squeezing through the thin, dark opening was unlikely. Mike, where are you? Come on, you're going to get yourself in trouble again. Tony rubbed his cheek and squinted. What is this, some kind of gag? Mike, the maintenance guys from the alley aren't going to be happy. A voice echoed from behind the wall.
Sweep the sweeper. Sweep the sweeper.
My God, who's up there?
Sweep the sweeper. Sweep the sweeper.
Is that you, Mike? What, is he stuck? I don't even see him, said Tony. Men from behind the desk jogged down the alley. Damn, Mike, here they come. Excuse me, said one of the maintenance guys. He reached by Tony's shoulder and pushed his screwdriver upward. After a few careful adjustments, the sweeper retracted. It should work now. My friend, he's trapped up there. The guy looked at his fellow worker and grinned. A man can't get trapped up there. There ain't no room. You got an 8-inch slot from the sweeper and maybe a 2x2 cage. Your friend ain't up there. I saw him climb up, said Tony. Not up there. The two men started back up the alley. Tony glanced upward into the darkness and then ducked his head back into the alley. Danny and the others watched him closely. Where's Mike? Tony swallowed once and stroked his chin. He glanced back at the wall. Tell us, Tony, what's the answer? Sweep the sweeper.